You know, autumn is my absolute favorite season, and I know it is for many of you. Autumn is just the perfect time for leather boots, for flannel, for warm hoodies, and of course for walks in the woods. I'm out here with my 4-year-old son, Pax. We're enjoying this beautiful autumn day in Ontario, Canada. And also, autumn is for one more thing: field watches. Today I have a very special field watch on my wrist, and I can't wait to show it to you. If you saw my unboxing a few days ago, you'll have gotten a taste, but there's so much to this watch that I can't wait to go into. And so, with no further ado, why don't we get into it? Now I have to tell you, I'm really excited to show you this watch because there's a bit of a history to this piece. This is the first watch that I ever asked a company to review. It was way back when my channel was totally tiny. In fact, I didn't even have a channel. I had 1,800, I think, subscribers on Instagram. I noticed this company. I saw that they were Canadian. I reached out to them and I said, hey, I'm nobody, but I'd love to shoot your watch for a few days. And they said, yes. Now, that was over a year ago. They politely explained that, you know, we've got all kinds of people who want to see this thing. There's only 2 in production total in the entire world. And so they are busy making their way around this country and others. And when it comes in, we'll get it to you. Well, since that time, my Instagram channel has changed into 3,500 or so. I started a YouTube channel in January, and so I'm excited to have all of these options now to bring this watch to you because it's a Canadian watch that's Swiss made, and it's just something special. So I'm really excited to get the word out about this York and Front watch called the Burrard. This is the Burrard by York and Front. Now, York and Front Watch Company is essentially 2 guys, one in Toronto, one in BC, both Canadian, and they set out to create a very special kind of watch. They wanted to create the kind of watch that you could wear Monday to Friday in the boardroom, and then you could wear it on the weekend, out fishing, out in the field, and I think they may have succeeded. Now, the very first thing that you're going to notice when you take a look at this York and Front Burrard is that it is a very clean dial. And at first you might think that it is even perhaps a little bit on the plain side, but I think you'd be mistaken. You might even check out something like this Timex Weekender and say, yeah, I see a lot of similarities here. $35 watch, $4.99 US dollar watch. But the difference, dear friends, is in the details. Let's take a look at some of these details. First of all, we notice that there is a railroad chapter ring around the outside, and it's not a very chunky railroad chapter ring. It's actually fairly minimal. It's very close to the edge, and some of it's a little bit distorted by that crystal. As you can see, it sort of disappears on the edges. It has small minute markings just inside that railroad chapter ring. And then next in we find the big applied numerals. And this really, dear friends, is where the Burrard shines. Just check out those numerals. They're actually brushed, which provides an interesting texture. They move from black to silver, where you can see the brushed in daylight. The handset is very nice. It also is brushed. They're a good length. They reach almost all the way out to the chapter ring. And that seconds hand is very unique. It has an arrow tip just a little bit more than halfway, and then it has a very slender red tip on the end. And it's these sorts of things that provide interest in the watch. I really like the York and Front font, that very small line underneath. Of course, Swiss made down there at the 6. And this is a Canadian designed but Swiss made watch. And that's very important to remember. We're going to talk about what's under the hood in a minute, but just remember that what you see here is certified as Swiss made. There is lume on the hour hands, the minute hand, and the seconds hand. The case has a very nice profile with turn down lugs drilled lugs, which is really nice. The bezel is a high polish, like you'll see on many Hamilton khakis. And the lugs are very interesting. They're multifaceted. There's brushing on the top. There's a bit of a chamfered edge, and that chamfered edge actually comes all the way around to the front. It's sort of hard to pick up. And so you're going to find on this Burrard a variety of textures and finishes on the dial and on the case. And so you see that something that actually presents very simple at first is actually a very interesting piece when you take the time to look at it. The crown is very simple. It has the York and Front logo on it. You can see the brushed profile there nicely. And turning the watch over, you'll see again that there is a York and Front logo on the back, which is quite nice. It says Burrard, automatic 100 meters. And yes, this watch is 100 meters water resistant, which means that, at least for most people, you don't need to worry about taking this in the water. You're going to find that this will be just fine to go for an afternoon swim. You're not going to want to go snorkeling in it. Of course, 100 meters isn't rated for that. But for the pool, for the lake, wear this on the weekend, throw it on a rubber strap, and you're good to go. Now, the strap that it comes on is actually quite nice. It's a very soft leather. I'm assuming it's genuine leather. Genuine leather is the lower level of the leather that's been smoothed away and then dyed and sometimes printed. This is very simple, very comfortable. There's no break-in period on this at all. It has a very nice buckle with the York and Front logo on it again. Now, speaking about the strap, this watch is an absolute strap monster. It has 20 millimeter lugs, and a lot of us will have, if you're a watch enthusiast, many 20 millimeter straps laying around in your watch box. So why don't we switch this out and take a look? Now, because this watch has drilled lugs, you don't have to fool around with trying to get your tool in there. It's actually super easy. Take the sharp end of your tool, stick it carefully in that hole, and out it comes. Did you really just pour your water in the middle of that?
I immediately regretted it, if that helps.
I'm going to cite you in this video. You're going to be a footnote. Okay, now I want to show you what it looks like with this strap from Vario on it. And the strap from Vario is pretty cool because it's actually a quick change strap. All you have to do is line it up in the hole, pull down on the release, and make sure it's in. And there you go. Pretty simple. And actually, look how good it looks on this pretty orange pumpkin strap from Vario, which is a great strap that I'm going to review shortly. But I have to tell you, I tried it on a few different kinds of straps, and my absolute favorite was this tan khaki colored canvas strap from Barton Bands. It just absolutely suited the watch so well, and I recommended to York and Front that they should consider perhaps including one of these straps in the future with future releases. Okay, let's talk about dimensions. The width on the Burrard is 38 millimeters. The lug to lug is 43. The case thickness comes in at, according to my calipers, exactly 12. And of course, inside the lugs for your straps, you're looking at 20 millimeters. So overall, this is an extremely well-sized watch for most people. 38 millimeters is kind of in that sweet spot for most people. I prefer perhaps a 40 or 42 millimeter size in my field watch, but I know not everybody has an 8-inch wrist like I do, so I think that they've made a great decision to stick with this size. And coming in at only 64 grams, this Burrard is going to feel very light on wrist, which is what you want in a field watch. Now let me tell you about one of the best features of this Burrard, and that is the fact that this watch is not only comfortable out here in the woods, but it is equally as comfortable Monday to Friday in the boardroom. Now let's talk about some of the negatives to this watch. First of all, the crown is a little bit sticky, but I talked to the guys at York and Front, and this crown, which is 6 millimeters, is actually going to be bumped up to 7. It's very nice. It's just a little on the small side. It's a little hard to screw down, and I think an increase in size is a great way to go. Again, this is a prototype, and that will be updated for the production version. Another potential negative for some people might be that the loom on this is not the longest lasting loom. I did wake up at 3 in the morning and find that the hands were still glowing, but by the morning they've all but disappeared, and there's no loom elsewhere on this dial. But this is a concession they had to make in order to have those brush numerals. And honestly, I think it's totally worth it. And this third negative really isn't a negative because it's more of a personal opinion, but I would love to see this in a larger size. I know 38 is perfect for most people. I know the large watch trend is over, and I'm not on board with the large watch trend either. But just for me and my 8-inch wrist, I just wish that it was maybe 40 millimeters. That would be absolutely perfect. But I completely understand why they would choose this size, and I think that for 95% of you, this is going to be a sweet spot. Now, what are the positives about this Burrard from York and Front? Well, I would say that straight off, the case is fantastically done. There's a lot of different angles, but nothing is sharp or too angular. It's done just right. The fit and the finish is fantastic. The dial is superb. Those applied markers really make it. The small minute numbers around the outside of the hour numbers, they just add a little bit of interest. They give a little bit of a field vibe. Yes, a true field watch should have 24-hour markers, but actually I use minute markers far more than I would ever use 24-hour markers because honestly, I'm not a soldier and I don't work for the police. I think the handset is really nicely done as well, and I particularly like that seconds hand tipped in red with that little arrow. It's an interesting design, even though it is a simple design, and I think that that is an important part of design, to keep things simple and yet still interesting. Every time I check the time on this watch, I find that I've put my wrist away and haven't actually checked the time. I've been caught off guard by the light reflecting off one of the numbers, or simply just enjoying the loom in the hands or whatever it might be, the polished case. And so you might find with this watch that it surprises you. There is a lot of visual interest. Now let's talk about the wild card in all of this. And I think that wild card is the movement that's underneath this screw down case back. So the movement that is in this York and Front Burrard is actually the STP-1-11. It's made by a company called Swiss Technology Production, and it's based out of Switzerland. It's entirely owned by the Fossil Group. So this is a company that was founded in 2008, and like the Sellita SW200, it's very, very similar to the ETA 2824. And so they chose this watch because right now Swatch Group is no longer selling to small companies. They're at a movements, so they can't get their hands on them. And because of that, the Sellita movements are more than 6 months behind. And I know that Henry and Eric want to get this watch out to us as soon as possible. It's been in design since the fall of 2018. And I think there's a lot of excitement for those who have seen this watch and they want to get it out into your hands. So they've gone with this movement that is to keep fantastic time, is Swiss made, very similar to the Etta and the Sellita, but is also available. And the great thing about this watch is that the movement is not going to have a ghost position, because if you notice, there is no date or day date complication on this watch. And I think this is one of the things that they wanted to do to keep the design simple and to keep it classy and classic, and I think they've achieved it. I think it was a great idea to skip the date. I know that some of you won't buy a watch without a date, but for those of you that will, this is a fantastic option. And this one right here actually has a ghost date position. I believe there's a Sellita in here, but the production design is not going to have that ghost position. Of course, the movement will be hacking and hand winding, as you've come to expect from a quality Swiss movement. And this is why the Burrard is priced where it's at. It's a Canadian designed watch, but it is also a Swiss made watch. And so $4.99 I think is a competitive price for these guys. I don't think they're going to make a ton of money off of these, but they're going to make a quality watch that you are going to enjoy. Now, this watch is going to compete with some other heavy hitters. Hamilton, Tissot, right up there. There's some other micro brands doing some great stuff. But I honestly think that if you put this watch up against a lot of other brands, you're going to find that it holds its own. It really does. In fact, the other day, I threw this watch on top of my watch box. And underneath the watch box where there's a glass lid, I could see all my other watches there. And honestly, it almost looked a cut above a lot of the watches in my box, which are all priced around the price of this watch. So this is really cool. I asked Henry about the name York and Front because having lived in Toronto, Ontario, Canada, I know that there's a pretty prominent intersection of two streets, York Street and Front Street. In fact, it's where Union Station, our big subway train station, is located. It actually is a pretty great place to visit. If you ever go to Toronto, you're going to want to check out Union Station. And he said, you know, we really liked the name York and Front for a few reasons. It's Canadian. York and Front are similar in size for the font and the design of the watch. And, you know, you do have to take that stuff into consideration. And then he said something that I thought was really profound. He said, you know, right at the intersection of York and Front is Union Station, and that is a gateway to travel and adventure. It is used throughout the week for people commuting back and forth to work, and then on the weekends for people to go all kinds of places. And I thought, yeah, that really summarizes this Burrard. It is definitely a beautiful field watch that you can wear 9 to 5, Monday to Friday, and then heck, you just keep it on the wrist Friday night and go on out, have a great time, go in the woods, go to the club, whatever it is you want to do, this York and Front will do it with you. Before I go, I just want to thank Henry and Eric for sending me this York and Front Burrard. It has been an absolute pleasure to hang out with it for the past week and a half, and I am not looking forward to sending it on to the next person. If you enjoy this watch, stay tuned to their website for launch details. That will be coming up very soon, and if this is something you want, you're going to want to get your order in ASAP. As always, if you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe. It really helps prop up my fragile ego. Have a wonderful day. All right, I'm going to try that again, okay?